Welcome back to Sunrise Daily, and our conversation continues. We have with us Mr. Laolu Akande, former presidential spokesperson, aide, and host of Channels Television's Inside Sources. Good to see you as well. you saw an interview with Senator Nenadi, and of course the conversation about opposition. Yeah. With everything that has been going on. I mean, I know you've worked with her before, during the Buhari administration, but it's also brought the question about how we are handling our political parties and the viability of opposition in Nigeria. Yeah. With all this drama, whether it is from the PDP, whether it is the Labour Party, how are we handling opposition? Recently, we saw a story where Professor Patu Tomi had said something about some shadow government, and then at least allegedly, and then the DSS are saying, no, that is against the law. They are going to have to bring down the stake on him for doing that. But you know, it's a very important question about opposition and these gales of defections, the impacts that has on the democratic process in a country like Nigeria.
Yeah, I mean, I think the credits that we can't deny Professor Patu Tomi is that he does understand that there's a serious vacuum, even in terms of contesting ideas with the current administration. You know, something that the opposition, whether it's PDP or LP, has completely, you know, lost. You know, I mean, they couldn't fix that thing. So I think, you know, Tomi is saying that, look, let's fill this gap, you know, and it calls it shadow government, whatever that is, you know.
Is it against the law?
Well, you know, I wouldn't be able to say that, you know, I'll let the lawyers do that determination, but I think it's an expression of an idea. We don't know who the government is, you know. It says it's shadow government, it says it's not to bring down any government, it's just to provide ideas, specific ideas and alternatives. You know, so if you look at what he's trying to do and you remove the government, it seems to be somebody who understands, you know, that we have to contest ideas, even with the ruling party, which is not existing. But beyond that, is not, I don't see it as a very viable, you know, thing that is going to happen. You know, I think Tomi is just trying to say that, look, this space is empty. You know, we can't leave this in a vacuum. That's what I see. So I would advise the SSS people not to bother themselves too much. There are more important things for DSS to deal with. Please, you know, let's do that. Just leave with Tomi. Tomi is just having fun.
Let's talk about these defections. Do they worry you? With the APC, are they there yet? Because the number keeps increasing daily. Well, if they get that majority in the National Assembly, which you know, many people say it's not really a problem. But for other people, they might feel, wait, hold on, we need to be able to have viable oppositions, especially in a place like the National Assembly. Right. We need to hear dissenting voices. It's not a crime not to agree. It's just the way democracy works. Right. Does it worry you, all these defections?
I'm concerned that the tone and content of our politics is becoming more and more personal aggrandisement. You know, that is worrying. Look, I mean, nobody is saying that there shouldn't be some place for personal, you know, issues and people trying to take care of themselves, you know, to a reasonable extent. But the overriding interest must and always has to be about public interest. Now, so the way you and manner that you are seeing this defection is just a troubling reflection of how low Nigerian politics has become. And I always say this, and I'll say it again. The guy that they are going to meet, you know, the president, the man stood in opposition from 1999, specifically even 2003, after all the other the states in his party lost to the Obasanjo hurricane of that election in 2003. And he stood in one place, you know, all the way for like 12 years until his party got to the center. You know, so I'm wondering,
he had the
those
money.
guys, don't they, well, you know,
he had the money to stay in one place.
There's nothing that he has in terms of material capacity that they lack. We're talking about Delta State, for instance. You know, I mean, there's a lot of money in Delta State, you know, so I'm thinking, don't they look at him, you know, don't they get some lessons, you know? So, and that's why I think that It is just the overriding overly personalization of Nigerian politics.
I spoke to a politician that defected not too long ago, and he said politics is about survival, Kayla.
And it shouldn't be. Politics and governance ought to be about the transformation of people. The reason why all of us say that, look, let's have a government is to provide for us, to secure our welfare, to do things for us that individually doing it might not be possible or might create chaos and disorderliness. So it's not about survival. It shouldn't be about, yes, there's a bit of survival in it because you have opposition, people who are trying to take you out, but the moment you get into office, you're supposed to start governance and begin to do some things that will make the people want to keep you in that position. The way they're going, look, all these opposition people moving all over the place, they don't reflect what is happening on the ground. So it's like Nigerian political elites, they're on this side, and the Nigerian people, they're on the other side. And it also tells you that they don't really believe that power comes from the people. No, because they know how to manipulate these things.
Speaking of the Nigerian people, UTME, we saw... Well, we've had a lot of disappointing stories from JAMB over the years. That's what I keep telling myself. Don't be shocked, don't be shocked. We've had disappointing stories from JAMB. What do you make of this whole situation? We saw the good leader of JAMB. He was crying, visibly in tears.
Yeah.
Some people are moved by tears. I'm not, because it's the Nigerian child, and it feels like in many ways we failed them. With every year, we look for a new way to fail the Nigerian child. What do you make of that situation?
Yeah, well, it is sad that somebody committed suicide. And,
someone killed herself.
Yeah, and the kind of mental torture that the students will have to deal with and all of that, But I don't think that altogether this is a bad development for two reasons. Number one, if you look at what Oloyede has been able to do in JAMB, he has done a lot of cleaning up the place. And he's fighting a battle around examination malpractices, a lot of cheating going on, with having very troubling circumstances and situations where parents are paying, for people to sit for their walls. It's become a pandemic, and Oloyede is moving against that. And so we have to be careful not to let the people that are on the receiving end of that important reform. We have to be careful not to let them use this occasion to push back against somebody like Oloyede or even the education minister, who is clearly, also reform-minded. So my take is that we have to be, look, Oloyede has come out to say that, hey, this is an embarrassment. I take responsibility. Not many people will behave that way. So we need to encourage him to continue to reform JAMB, and we need to encourage the minister. Look, let us bring the same kind of reform in other education sectors, NECO and WAEC, so that we can have more accountability, so that we can be sure that this idea of cheating, which has become a serious pandemic, is sorted out.
All right, let's move to Ayo in Lagos. He has a few questions for you as well. Ayo.
Issue, well, definitely commendable, the things that have been said about, the response of JAMB to that glitch. But then the follow-up, which is the rescheduling, is also causing some furore, so to speak. A concerned parent is at a crossroad right now, as JAMB, probably didn't fully consider the current exams also ongoing for some secondary school students who wrote the JAMB before and now have to rewrite it again. It's quite a dilemma, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for asking that question, because I've been trying to do a bit of inquiry myself as to why it is impossible. And I imagine, I've not gotten quite a very good response, but I imagine that maybe it's a question of technicality. Why is it that, those tests that have been done already, those examinations that have been written, that we had a glitch in the marking of it, how come is it that they can't go back and just fix that error? I imagine that there must be a technical problem or impossibility of that. Otherwise, that is what I will be asking for. That look, well, if they have, I mean, they've done the examination. The problem is with the computer, you know, setup and the patch that people spoke about, you know, around the marking and the review of the papers. If that is as simple as that for a layman like me, I would say, okay, just go and remark the stuff. But I imagine that that is not technically possible, and that's why people are not talking about it. Which then means that we have to find a way to sort out the students who have been affected by this problem. And, you know, it comes at a cost. You know, the registrar himself has paid a cost, you know, openly, you know, acknowledging his personal embarrassment, taking personal responsibility. You know, and I guess those of us, you know, students and parents too, we also have to pay a price. And I think this thing can be negotiated and discussed that, look, we are all together in this. What I just don't want is that I don't want, you know, people who want to persist with the huge corruption in education. They must not get an headway with this crisis. We shouldn't allow them to get an headway because of this glitch.
Just one more thing from me, and then it's back to Kayla. This administration will be 2 years in a matter of days, less than, well, maybe a little over 10 days from now. Of course, naturally, feedback is going to start coming in, and then there's been some positioning from multilateral organizations abroad and within the country. How do you see Nigerians accepting this whole thing?
Well, you know, by accepting, what do you mean? Accepting what?
Assessment. Our assessment.
Oh, assessment.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you said accepting. Oh, well, you know, it's there are quite a lot of things that hasn't happened that many of us expect and the Nigerian people expect in terms of the conditions of living, you know, inflation. You know, people have, you know, not enough money. Even the workers that got that 70,000 naira, you know, it doesn't seem to add up. You know, we are still dealing with insecurity. So we are still dealing with the major problems of the day. And so I expect that this administration we take a very, very keen look at what has happened in 2 years and make some very dramatic changes and around especially the issue of insecurity and some of the economic pains in the land. Look, what has happened with the social investment program, for instance? You know, what are we doing about poverty? I haven't seen a lot. There's a new minister that got there in August. You know, we can't see, I'm not saying that it's not happening, but we can't see what is happening. I mean, that is one thing that we ought to do as a people, to continue to focus on social investment, to say that we are concerned about the problem of poverty. So, but I would say that there are also, you know, some very good things to cheer about in the administration. You have, you know, ministers such as Dr. Laolu, who is trying to reform education, trying to say to the governors that, look, we have money, come and take the money. If you take the money, this is how you can transform education. And then health. You know, Dr. Patel is doing quite a bit of trying to, you know, let government take care of some of the health bills. But I think it's not audacious enough. I think it should go all the way. Let us have, you know, insurance, national insurance, where poor people are taken care of. You know, and we can have it. There's a report, you know, from the past administration that has already outlined that. You know, so he is in the right direction, just like the education minister. But Patel needs to be more audacious. We can talk of Wike. You know, in spite of all the issues that we have with Wike's politics, you know, you cannot deny, you know, that Wike is working. Although I also hope that Wike can also pay some attention to human capital development. So there are people that are doing good work. I mean, you know, we shouldn't deny that.
We are wrapping up right now, but just so we can highlight this particular concerned parent is at the crossroads. It says JAMB didn't take into cognizance children who are writing the IGSCE. There are so many exams. That's the International General Certificate of Secondary Examination. So maybe if we get some kind of clarity on that from JAMB on what happens to those who fall within that category, because the parents are sending us that message. But I want to thank you so much, Mr. Laolu Akande, for being with us on the program, and good luck with all the work you have ahead of you.
Thank you so much, Kila.